my question is, when you would get some peace or joy and you thought it would last forever, but the suffering would come back, and then what you've learned about that obviously now, but take us through how all that happened so many times. I'm sure it happened so many times in different ways.
I didn't see the unconscious part, you
Yeah,
know.
right,
I
right. That's
couldn't
it.
see that it wasn't about those programs of me trying to love myself or trying to not sabotage myself, or even when I went to those groups where the teacher said, like somatic groups, where the teacher said, just allow your anger and let it through. And I was just, I just fucking couldn't do that, you know? And I was looking
Yeah,
around in the room and I saw that no one can do that. Everybody's just fucking stuck, you know? That's what I saw
yeah,
and that was my experience. So the
yes,
suffering came back and the pain and the tension and the disappointment came back
yeah,
every time when I had a kind of success with therapies,
yeah,
because I couldn't see that at the core there was the inability to express my emotions when I
yes.
talked with someone, when I was on my own, when I was whatever, you know, during the day, you know, I
Mhm.
couldn't. I couldn't even feel it, Scott. That's the biggest part of emotional
Yeah.
repression for me. I didn't know that there was an issue with that because I couldn't even feel those emotions. So
Mhm.
whenever I was supposed to set a boundary with someone, for example, like I don't like the way you are talking with me and I want to finish this conversation now. I need some space. I just couldn't
Mhm.
say it, you know?
Right.
Like, yeah, 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 yeah. Maybe you are right. Let's talk about that. You know, like you can hear it in my voice, like this phoning response, you know,
Mhm.
because I couldn't even feel anger, not just anger, like power when you just speak your mind, when you speak your authentic, when you can set a boundary with someone, you know. I just couldn't
Right.
do that. Or when I wanted to express my opinion in a group, I just got anxious and I ended up not saying anything. Or
Yeah.
when I felt sexual with a man, I got really anxious, you know, and or when I made sex with my partner, the only I was so shut down. I just faked orgasm basically because it was so
Mhm.
re-traumatizing me for a long time, you know. I could bring more examples, but basically
Yeah.
what I want to say that in each situation in my human relationships, I couldn't say and do what I wanted because I wasn't aware that I couldn't even feel the emotions that I repressed as a child. So that's why the
Definitely.
thought didn't even come up that I have an issue with that until I met you, you know? And some consciousness in those modalities and in non-duality and spirituality, presence practices, self-recognition, you know, and all these things. Like as long as I did them and practiced them and focused on them, I felt some ease. But the moment I stopped them, I was suffering again, you know, especially with non-duality. It was very strong, like focusing on awareness, on all pervading space, interconnectedness, love, and all these things, you know, which is true experientially, especially now, it's true for me. But the moment I stopped focusing on that result, what I wanted, because don't forget, my conditioning was I have to find a state or something that will stay for the rest of my life. And but the moment I stopped focusing or using those practices, the suffering came back eventually. You know, very quickly. You know, my benzodiazepine addiction comes to my mind. I think it's just the same thing. The moment I stopped using benzodiazepine, the pain came back in my body and the suffering in my body. So same with therapy, non-duality, meditation. The moment I stopped using those,
Mhm.
the suffering came back because I couldn't access the root of repressed emotions in my body. And
Wow.
it got very, very bad after decades of repressing myself with those modalities and techniques and methods, you
Mhm.
know. And back then, again, I was unconscious to that. So I didn't understand that I want to do something good for myself. I want to feel better, and there was spirituality, there was like presence practices, and there was therapeutic methods in my hand, So I
Mhm.
literally felt that I'm doing the best as I can to help myself, but that itself was standing in the way because back then I couldn't
Yeah.
see that the very attempt to heal and feel better was the movement of getting away from the root of the suffering, which was emotional, strong repression in my body
Yeah.
that was creating this seeking and wanting to heal that attempt itself. So
Yeah.
the very attempt of trying to heal and get better was the attempt to push down what was creating the suffering and the pain in my body and nervous system and what was creating the anxiety basically. And that's why the mental health issues, attention deficit, anxiety, insomnia, colitis, like all these symptoms in my nervous system and in my body got very, very bad after a while because I was constantly pushing down my emotions and myself with those things that I
Yeah.
wanted to help myself with. That's just so contradictory.